We're now going to talk about solving two-step equations. When we solve two-step equations, the process will be different depending on whether there are fractions or there are no fractions in the equation. If there are no fractions in our equation, then our first step will be to add or subtract the constant on both sides. Once we have the variable term isolated, our second step will be to divide both sides by the coefficient. In contrast, if there are fractions in our problem, the first step will be to add or subtract the constant to both sides. But then for the second step, we are going to multiply both sides of the equation by the denominator. The first equation that we are going to do together is x over 8 minus 5 equals 3. Whenever we solve an equation, the first step is to always get the variable term by itself. So we want to get x over 8 by itself. Currently, there is a minus 5 with the x over 8. So we're going to need to add 5 to both sides. When I add 5 to both sides, they're going to cancel each other out on the left side, so I'm just left with x over 8. And on the right, 3 plus 5 is going to equal 8. Now, since this problem has a fraction in it, when I go to isolate the variable x, my second step is to get rid of the division. So since x is currently being divided by 8, I'm going to multiply both sides by 8 to undo that operation. When I multiply by 8, the multiplication and division cancel each other out, so I'm left with x equals, and 8 times 8 is 64. So for this problem, x equals 64. Now I can also check my answer by plugging 64 back into the problem and seeing if it works. So if I plug 64 back in, I have 64 divided by 8 minus 5 equals 3. And I want to ask myself, is that correct? Well, 64 divided by 8 is 8, and 8 minus 5 is 3. So this is correct, and I know my answer of 64 is right. Our second example is negative 2x plus 7 equals 15. For this two-step equation, we do not have any fractions. So our purpose is to isolate the x term. So first thing I want to do is get negative 2x by itself. Currently there is a 7 being added to the negative 2x. So I need to undo that operation by subtracting 7 on both sides. When I do that, the 7's will cancel. So I will be left with negative 2x equals 15 minus 7 is 8. At this point, I'm now trying to get x by itself. The x is being multiplied with the negative 2. So to undo this operation, I would need to divide both sides by negative 2. The negative 2's will cancel each other out, so I have x equals a positive divided by a negative is a negative, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So our answer is x equals negative 4. Again, I can check this answer by plugging negative 4 back in for x. We have negative 2 times negative 4 plus 7 should be 15. So negative 2 times negative 4, I know when I multiply two negatives, they make a positive, and 2 times 4 is 8. Plus the 7 should equal 15. 8 plus 7 is 15, so this works out. Left side is the same as the right side, so I know my answer is correct. It is time for you to try solving your own two-step equation. Please pause the video and attempt to solve 5x minus 10 equals 5. When you have finished solving the problem, resume the video to check your answer. To solve 5x minus 10 equals 5, since there are no fractions, our goal is to get the 5x by itself. Right now, the 5x has a 10 being subtracted from it, so we need to undo that minus 10 by adding 10 to both sides. When I do this, the 10s will cancel out, and I'll be left with 5x on the left. Drop down the equals, and 5 plus 10 is 15. Now that I have the 5x by itself, I want just x, so I need to get rid of the 5. Since 5 and x are being multiplied, I'm going to divide both sides by 5 because I know division will undo multiplication. When I divide by 5, the 5's cancel out, so I'm left with x equals, and 15 divided by 5 is 3. For the second U try, you should have begun by subtracting 3 on both sides of the equation. This will allow us to get x over 7 all by itself. Because the positive 3 and negative 3 will cancel out. And then on the right, when I simplify, negative 5 minus 3 is negative 8. When you add negative numbers, we keep it negative and then just add the two numbers together. Now that I have the x term isolated, I now just want to have the variable. So in order to get rid of the divided by 7, I need to multiply by 7 on both sides. On the left, the 7's will cancel each other out, so I have x equals, and negative 8 times 7 will be a negative 56. So for the last U try, x is equal to negative 56. This concludes our lesson on solving one-step and two-step equations. If you have any questions, please ask Ms. Brooks. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on your Daily Dose of Math.